To start off, my name is John Manganaro. I'm the VP of Product and Analytics for a company called DRIVIN. We're a bit of a new kid on the block. We're about a year and a half old outside of Chicago. And what we do is we work with car dealerships to help them optimize their inventory using a methodology that I'm here to talk about today called the optimal lot. Now, what does that mean? It means we're looking at market level data, dealer level data, understanding consumer demand, understanding what dealers are good at selling, identifying vehicles on dealers' lots that may not be aligned to their inventory, and we're trying to form a marketplace. So we're trying to move inventory that doesn't match a certain dealer to a buying dealer that wants that inventory, and vice versa. So if you think of your lot of 100 cars, maybe there's 4 or 5 that aren't really aligned to exactly what you do. We can get those out of your inventory for you, and then find a home for them for a dealership that's ready and primed to sell that type of vehicle. So if you just kind of imagine like a balancing act of dealerships' used inventory, that's what we're trying to do with advanced analytics. Nothing about this presentation is going to be about advanced analytics, but it is going to be about a methodology I work with a lot of our dealerships on, and it's really a methodology to help build an optimal inventory and take a methodical approach to looking at a VIN, understanding your dealership's makeup, not only your dealership itself, but also its position in the marketplace, and then deciding if this VIN matches our inventory. Does this fit our optimal lot? So we're going to start with understanding who your target audience is, understanding how your dealership's aligned in the marketplace, and then building your optimal lot around those two. So this is definitely a sequential order of events. I'm going to walk through examples we've done with dealerships at DRIVIN, talk about the situation, task, action, and result we did with each of the groups. So jumping right into it, customer segmentation is a really big piece for a lot of retail clients, or retail companies, I should say. Amazon's extremely good at it. You buy something on Amazon, they build up enough history about what you're looking at, what you purchase, they start making recommendations to you. Netflix is really good at this too. You know, they paid someone $1 million to help improve their recommendation engine by 10%, and ironically, they never even implemented it. But this is a really big piece of fixation in other industries, and I see it starting to spill over into automotive. So this is kind of what we do when we talk to dealerships about understanding your target audience. There's 3 layers of data that are really helpful when thinking about who's buying from you and why they're buying from you. The first level is demographic. It's the easiest stuff to find. It happens a lot on consumer credit reports. It's where you live, how big is your family, income, really basic statistics that are easy to find about a car shopper, and things that come along naturally in the selling process when you're speaking to consumers. It's nice to have, it's important to have, but it doesn't get you the level of detail you really need to understand the value of that consumer. So if we go one level deeper, it's called psychographic information. You talk to a customer who's looking to purchase a car, you understand he's a big hunter. He likes to take his 4 sons hunting. Probably not going to go show this guy a 2-door coupe to take he and his sons hunting out in Arkansas. You might want an SUV. You understand behaviors of the buyer a little bit, what they like to do, hobbies, skills, makeup beyond just their income, geography, etc. Psychographic information is that second bucket. The third, and in my opinion, probably the most important, is behavioral. How does this consumer work with a dealership when purchasing a vehicle? Did they email 3 or 4 times to haggle out a price before they showed up? Were they a chat lead? Did they show up on the dealership's lot with just a piece of paper of a VDP they printed out and they said, I want to see this car? All examples of behavioral. How does this person interacting with you? How much work do they want to get done before they come in? Do they need a salesperson to help them choose from a variety of options at the dealership? Or are they ready to go? They know exactly what MMYT they want. They have 3 or 4 VINs at 3 or 4 different dealerships. They're shopping. They're hammered down. They're ready to go. They want to spend the least amount of time in that rooftop as possible. They can do all of that. All of those are behavioral attributes. So why are these important? A case study we have from a dealership we used in Chicago. Looked at 2 years of retail sales data. Pulled up as much information as we could get from each of the consumers that bought. They weren't logging this, so really we had to sit down with the folks that were selling the used inventory, the sales folks on the floor, over a lunch period and ask them a little bit about the people buying. It's really hard to remember everybody you sold to 13 months ago, but a couple weeks ago you can remember a lot of information. So these guys were really good at just spitting out, oh yeah, I talked to that guy over a course of 2 weeks. He was a really good buyer because X, Y, and Z. We had financing for him, made good money on the front end, made good money on the back end. He's a repeat buyer. He's coming back with one of his friends next week as a referral. Boom, 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 data points. But they weren't logging these. They were just registered in the salespeople's heads. So what we did was we created just an Excel spreadsheet. Name, few columns of information, what they bought, how they first interacted with the dealership, so on and so forth. And I came back 3 months later to look at it, and they had a really good idea of who a high-value lead was, a medium-value lead, and a low lead. Because let's be honest, not all customers are created equal. The folks that they found out were the best for them were the people that were emailing ahead of time and coming in with their homework ready. They were educated shoppers. They did a lot of homework on their own. They didn't need to take up a lot of the salespeople's time. They had a few questions, wanted a test drive, pre-approved financing, ready to go. These people were really cost effective because the sales folks weren't spending a ton of time on them. Their margins were actually really good, and they were able to move through the cycle very quickly. Now, that's not always the case for everybody. That's not always the target customer. There are definitely dealerships that do a really good job of cultivating and really nurturing a relationship with a buyer that's taking a long time. They're taking 3 or 4 weeks to go through the process. They want help. They want to be educated. They want help picking out a car. They want your help doing financing, and that's worth it as long as that's your target customer. If you're really good at selling to that buyer, now you found who your target audience is, and it's all about just tracking this data. A lot of this can be done in DMS, CRM, but like I said before, it's as simple as putting it in an Excel spreadsheet with a few columns of information you want to track, and I'm happy to share templates with you guys as well. So the second piece is market position, and this is always a really fun one. So who's your competition? How big is your market? How good are you at selling within your market? And who is your competitor? So defining your target market, creating a specific value proposition that differentiates you from other dealerships, that forms your competitive analysis. This is always my favorite part of doing this with dealerships. I love when they use tools to help them price their vehicles, regardless of who it is. This dealership had vAuto, and I think it's a great tool. I'm glad they were using it. And I watched the guy price a VIN, and I sat down with him, he put the VIN in, and he expanded his radius to, I think, 500 miles. And he said, you know, I'm pricing to my market. I want to see this. And I said, okay, well, let's take it down a little bit. I know what you're trying to do. You want to see enough like vehicles that you can price accordingly. I totally get it. But let's take a look and understand what your true market reach is before we jump into the pricing tool. And he said, well, no, I have people, this guy was in a Midwest market. He said, I have people from other states driving in. I'm really good at bringing in people from beyond 200 miles. I know these types of customers. I know how big my market is. So I said, great. Let's take a look at 2 years worth of your used retail sales data, and let's put it into buckets. How far people drove based on their address, consumer's address, to your dealership, and we'll do a radius search and just understand how far they drove. We did 0 to 10 miles, 10 to 25, 26 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 and 150, and 200 and over. We looked at it over a quarter. Does anybody want to guess what percentage of customers drove more than 200 miles to his dealership to buy a car over 3 months? 5%. Anybody want to take the under? 2. Okay, how about one level up? How about 100 to 200? What percentage of buyers you think? A little bit higher? Not very much. This is what it was. Over half were within 10 miles of his dealership. How quickly it drops down. 5% came in from over 100 miles over the course of a quarter. I'm a big fan of market-based pricing. I'm a big fan of doing things this way. If you're going to price to market, here's your market. 50 miles for this guy in the Midwest market. This is what he does. You're going to remember outliers. You're going to remember people that did drive far to look for a random car over the course of a quarter, over a year. You're going to think of these and you're going to think, oh yeah, I had someone from 2 states away or 300 miles away come to me because we have a great dealership and we had the right inventory. It's usually an outlier. Now, if you have an even spread of this, congratulations. I mean, kudos to you. You have a monster market reach. I haven't seen a single dealership we've done business with that didn't have this really de-escalating hockey stick on here. So it's not just about the number of vehicles that buy, but what about the profitability? So this is a franchise dealer. What we did was we split his inventory in half between on-brand and off-brand. Same data. We looked at people and how far they traveled. What do you think happened to spread the further out someone was from the dealership? Think it was down? You think it was high? The farther someone's willing to go to a dealership, how price sensitive do you think they are? This was their all-in front and back end profitability per VIN. On brand, pretty consistent. He only sold a few of these beyond 200 miles and they were actually negative. He lost money on them. Now before you get excited about this guy, just remember that this was the 2%. This was 3%. They had some random cars that someone really wanted that were hard to find. They were able to sell 4 or 5 of them over the quarter. They were able to make a really good spread. But really, 4 or 5 out of 450 they sold. This is a big number, but remember the quantity is really small. On brand, this isn't surprising if you think about it. Let's pretend this is a Ford dealer. How many Ford dealers can I find in a 200-mile radius? Probably a lot if you're in an A or B or C market. So his reach on Ford was actually pretty good for on-brand. Off-brand, it was a hit-or-miss strategy. It was just kind of finding vehicles he thought he could get a good price on. He held them for a while. The age of this inventory was a lot longer as they went out, and the folks that are willing to drive further are usually the folks that are going to be willing to spend the extra time if they can get good money back on the return. They're going to be the most price aggressive. I'll drive 200 miles if I can save $500 on a car. So those are the type of people. I believe your question was, within your market, are you able to track market share? Is that like how well you are at retaining your customers? Yeah. Sure. Sure. I mean, yeah, ours, we don't really get into pricing. We leave that to other companies that have established themselves as being really good pricing strategists for dealerships. I'm more about stocking the right cars, and I'm a big fan of moving things quickly and getting out of cars that you shouldn't be stocking. Now, I will say, when we got into this, and started to understand at a marketing level who we should be targeting. Now we got into the competitive analysis piece, which is the last piece, is within 50 miles, who else is stocking the same inventory as me? If I'm a Ford dealer, who else is stocking Fords that aren't Ford dealerships? And that's the market level data that we brought into the table. CPO is a big push for a lot of brands right now, basically all brands. And I think there's definitely a really good sales pitch to it. I think there's a lot of consumers out there. I believe 30% of used buyers are buying CPO now. I think it's a great strategy. I think it's a really important part of inventory to manage. But what we've seen in almost every market is franchise dealerships are leaving the 4 to 7-year-old vehicles off their lots. Independent dealers and off-brand dealers are selling those at a very high clip. So if you think about it, it's who else in my market, now that I know what my radius is, who's coming to my dealership to buy from me. Within that radius, who is my competition? And you get that by who's selling like inventory to me. Who's going after the same target customers as me? Could be independent, could be other franchises, could be CarMax, could be a lot of people. But if you look in that radius and you start to understand pockets that you may be missing, if you are a franchise dealer, who's poaching my brand from me? Now, maybe I don't want to sell 7-year-old Fords. Maybe that's just really not my forte. I'm a CPO business. I do great new sales. I don't really have the target audience to sell 7 to 10-year-old models for. I'm okay leaving that aside. At least you have a strategy behind it. But if you're blindly just stocking inventory for other reasons, not aligning to your customers, you may be missing out on really good opportunities to not only sell on-brand, but off-brand vehicles that are attractive to your target customers that may be off-brand buyers. And finally, there's inventory selection. So now you have your customer segment. You understand where you stand in the marketplace. You understand who your competitors are. You understand what your competitors are stocking. This just wants me to go on the internet. Now you can use software tools. Now you can use other companies to say, is this the right fit? Now that I've actually stocked this inventory, price it. Price it according to your strategy. We're not really in the market of doing that. But if you guys have a front-end gross you want to hit, if you want to hit a back-end gross, if you want to hit a total commission sale, you want to understand how quickly your cars are turning, you want to do the velocity model, awesome. Do all those things. But those things are going to become a lot easier if you do a self-assessment of your inventory and understand starting with my customers, who's buying from me, who's competing with me, and now do I have the right inventory to win against my competition, going against those guys competing for the same customers. So the final piece of this presentation is actually talking about biases. It's the things we do to get us into our current state of mind. It's mistakes we repeat. It's across every industry. This is not an automotive thing. This is a people thing. And these are biases that we catch ourselves doing that end up hurting us in the long run when we get away from a methodical approach to stocking inventory and making it built towards our target customers. So in a self-assessment, you've identified a target customer, you have the dealer prop, we have a bunch of cars in our lot now. Let's take a look at what we have and understand this is what we want. So I talked earlier about looking at the vehicles you want to have, looking at the vehicles you want to get out of. This is an exercise to start doing that and understanding biases that'll hurt you going through the process. Who here likes to gamble? Tony. Anybody else? How about this for a deal? I'll take a 6-sided die and I'll roll it. If it comes up 1 or 6, you pay me $100. Any other outcome, I pay you $100. Would you guys take that? Fair die. 2 numbers for me, 4 for you. You take that every day. If you played this game indefinitely, I would go broke. You would have all of my money. So we take a die and we roll it and it comes up a 6. You owe me $100. Latching onto that outcome and saying, I lost this game, I shouldn't be playing this, the process is broken. This is called outcome bias. Instead of looking at a process, you look at the outcome and make a judgment. From the automotive industry, you buy a car wholesale, you stock it, it fits your optimal lot, you have target customers. Something happens in the market where maybe buying behavior shifts. We saw one dealer in Chicago that was a BMW dealer. The 3 Series models were actually pretty well balanced in the market. This guy listed 76 used BMWs one day. Brand new to the market, completely flooded the inventory in the market and basically said, I'm the BMW dealer here. I'm gonna get, even if I cut off my nose in spite of my face, if anybody's buying these cars, it's gonna be from me. This is something that affected an outcome. It wasn't a bad idea to purchase that car. Something happened where the outcome wasn't ideal for you. Even though you were primed to sell that car, it was priced effectively, it was clean, it was marketed well, something happened where it didn't sell in your time frame, the 30 to 45 days, 60 days, whatever it is. It's stocked, it didn't move, now we need to make a decision on it. Whatever that decision is, if you want to keep it, you want to slash the price on retail, you want to wholesale it, the process was correct, the outcome wasn't ideal. You had a 2 out of 3 chance to beat me on the dice roll, you lost. It doesn't mean you should stop the game, it doesn't mean you should stop playing it. It means you had a bad outcome. But indefinitely, if you continue to stock that car, if you continue to play that game, you're going to come out on top. So latching on to a negative outcome like this is what happens when outcome bias comes into play. Recency bias is the exact opposite. So I was sitting with a dealership group in Ohio. The guy had 10 of his store managers around a table. I was sitting there waiting to get started. He wanted to talk about something else. And he called out one of his UCMs and he said, I'm sick of you selling a car, making a good amount of money on it, and then rushing out to buy 5 more because you just sold it and made a lot of money on it. Now, between the time that car was purchased, reconditioned, marketed, and sold, about 30 to 40 days passed. A lot can happen in 30 to 40 days within a market. Rushing out to immediately restock that VIN, not only one, but several of them because you sold it to a customer and made a good amount of money on it, is recency bias. It's not sticking to the process, it's reacting to a positive outcome, which is the opposite of the outcome bias. So you rush out, you purchase these cars, and you have no idea, in the last 30 to 40 days, have more dealers purchased these cars? Have they seen analytics, have they seen reporting to say, this type of VIN is moving really well in your market, and now 15 to 20 more have come into the market since you listed yours. You're running out and you're making a quick decision before calculating and taking a look at your market, but taking a look at your inventory and saying, does it still make sense for us to stock and sell this car? Following the process would help prevent this bias. Negativity bias is by far the one I hear the most when I talk to these guys. I sold a Range Rover in 2011 and got burned on it. I'll never stock one again. 5 years later. I sold a Jeep Cherokee that was just a disaster, whatever it was. 4 years ago and got burned on it. I'll never purchase one of those cars again. When you think about reactions we have in general, the amount of good we feel from something and the amount of negative we feel from something are never even. It's something called utility theory. If I give you $100 for absolutely no reason, the amount of joy you get from that versus when I take it away is drastically different. In most studies, it's somewhere between 2 and 4 times higher. The negative aspect of that is 2 to 4 times higher than the positive. The feeling of angst and hate you feel when that negative feeling hits is far more memorable, it's far more lasting than the positive effect you have from actually getting it or winning. They talk to a lot of professional athletes and say, do you love winning or do you hate losing? And almost all of them talk about hating losing. They hate to lose. This is the outcome of a negativity bias, and it's always important to understand what you sell and don't sell well. But if you're at your second or third dealership in 5 years and you stocked a car that burned you a few years ago, it may have been a bad fit. It may have been a bad VIN. It may have been a lot of reasons, but it doesn't mean you should write it off going forward. It means you should reassess the process. It may make sense to stock it now, it may not, but to completely write off a make model or an MMYT because you got burned in the past is a really dangerous way to miss out on good opportunities for sales. So negativity bias is another big one there. I kind of pushed through the last piece quickly, but the methodology is very clean if you think about it, and there's really easy tricks to do if you're going through it. If you want to understand your market reach, we have this on our website. I'm happy to show it to you guys as well. It takes 10 minutes and it's really easy to do. Take your DMS data, download the addresses of everybody who purchased a car from you into a spreadsheet. Addresses, if you want to put profit in there, if you want to put the MMY in there, if you want to put anything about the vehicle, spread, whatever, into a spreadsheet, download it. Google Maps has a really clean interface where you can upload this spreadsheet and it will put pin drops all around your dealership's address to show you your market reach. It shows you the addresses, and you'll see clusters. You'll see pockets of these little pins put in there, and you'll understand the further out you go, how thin they get. Sometimes you have a little bit, people from maybe the east are coming a little bit further than the west. Maybe you have a closer city, a closer region, a closer market in one direction or the other that takes customers from you, but there's opportunity in another direction. You'll see pockets where a competing dealership pops up that captures some of your inventory as well, attracts some of your customers. You're going to see the pins start to thin out around competition. It's a really good visual aid to take a look at your market and say, I see a bunch of pins here, I see a bunch of pins here. We're really thin on this side. And you can actually use the filters of the other data you put in the spreadsheet to say, only show me people that I've made more than $1,000 front end on. And those pins start to disappear. They start to filter and gray out, and only the folks that you've designated show up in the map again. It's a really powerful exercise because the data is so clean to look at. It's very easy to do. So putting that into the spreadsheet, putting that into Google Maps is something we do for these folks. You can do it yourself. It's super simple, and I'm happy to give you guys instructions, but they're also posted on our website when we do this. I talked about the spreadsheet capturing consumer data points in the beginning. This is a really good one for the competitive analysis. And then again, inventory selection is something that is based pretty much entirely on these first two things. So I'd be curious, I kind of pushed through this a little bit quickly. We have 5 minutes left. But thinking about consumer data points are the things popping into your head right now that you think you want to start capturing that will help you understand the value of target customers. Are there behavioral attributes, psychographic information that you are starting to think, maybe I should start capturing lead source, maybe I should start capturing how many emails these guys send. I would love to hear any opinions, whether you agree with me or disagree with me. I would love to hear some thoughts from you folks. Nothing? Any hypotheses? I think we're really good at selling for the people that good at selling to everybody. Yeah. Yep. It's not. What's probably going to happen, honestly, is when we think about our bar chart and the distribution here, I've worked with folks in rural Wisconsin, middle of Ohio. I'm trying to think of other pockets where this was more distributed. Again, it shouldn't make a big difference between franchise and independent in terms of how far folks are coming out. Your market that you play in is probably going to be a little bit wider. So understanding how you differentiate in that market is going to be probably harder than someone that sits into a metro area or even like a mid-sized market. You're going to have people you know are brand competitors close by. You're going to have strong independents. CarMax plays a big role in this. If there's a CarMax by you, we call it the CarMax effect at DRIVIN. They're really good at understanding what to stock and how to move it. In a rural area, I've seen areas, North Carolina is another one actually, where the distribution of people traveling is a little bit further. However, the commission structure was actually really similar. The amount of money gross per vehicle made the further someone came actually still kind of escalated down a little bit. It's just going to be trickier because that breadth of the market's going to be wider. There's going to be areas of opportunity in there that are going to be hard to understand. There may even be pockets where the residency is just so low. There could be different target customers that exist close to you that don't exist a little bit further, and then they do exist again, kind of like a target ring, if you think about it. In metro areas and thicker markets, it's usually very clustered. If you go out and expand the market in a less populated area, you're going to have these pockets of customers that fit your position, and there's going to be pockets where they just don't. So it's a little trickier to do there, but the methodology itself should still be the same at its core. Yeah. Sure. Sure. I try not to get too into that. If they want to share, I'm happy to look at it, but I'm not also not trying to burn bridges or pick fights with. Yeah. Yeah. I don't have any data around partners to do that with. I do have examples where people have trimmed down their Google AdWords reach, and they've gone down from the 200 mile and concentrated on 50, and they've seen their market share increase by sticking in these 3 bars. How they allocated that, who they gave the money to, I don't know, other than Google is a pretty popular one. So simply eliminating the need to market to people 200 miles away and concentrate it more in the 50-mile radius in this instance was an effect that I saw their market share go up. Yes, I'm happy to send out a link. It's on our website. There's a tab called Optimal Lot, and there's an instruction manual to do it. It honestly is super easy, and then, like I said before, just seeing on a map these consumers and where they purchase from, you're going to see very quickly a pretty good data visualization layout. Cool. Anything else? I appreciate you guys coming here and participating so much. It makes my job a hell of a lot easier. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.